Hello everybody! How are you today? Are you doing good? I hope so. So last week we started some lessons about, who remembers? Moses! Moses is our new ordinary hero. And we're going to learn a lot about the life of Moses. So last week we learned that God has a wonderful plan for each one of our lives. And our Bible verse was, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans for good, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." And that was in Jeremiah 29:11. And God had a huge plan for Moses' life. He saved Moses from being killed by the Pharaohs. And Moses' mom put him in a basket and put him in the river right at the perfect time. He floated right into the arms of the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess. And she decided she wanted to keep Moses for her son. And in the meantime, Moses' mom got to take care of him and raise him for a little bit longer. God's plan always works out for the best. So today we're going to talk about waiting. I hate to wait. I bet you hate to wait too. Let's see what happens in our story today.
$2.98, $2.99.
Oh, hey kids, I'm just here doing some push-ups while I get ready for my superhero lesson with my trainer, Master Treelimb. But he's not here yet. You know, ever since we started the series about Moses, Ordinary Hero, I've been learning a whole lot. I feel like I'm ready for some real superhero stuff, not just training.
You think you are ready, do you?
Yeah, I know I am. I'm tired of all this training stuff. All we ever do is train, train, train. Why is this taking so long? I'm ready to do some real hero work.
Well, you will do some hero work, but you have to wait.
But I don't want to wait. I've been waiting.
I said you had to wait. All in good time.
You don't understand how hard it is to know God's plan for your life, but have to wait so long to do anything about it.
Every good hero knows the value of patience. You have to wait.
Listen, I'm tired of waiting. I want to be a hero right now.
Wait! That boy has a lot to learn.
What's that? It appears that man's trying to break into that car and steal it. Never fear, Captain Obvious is here.
Oh, okay, maybe you can help me.
Help you? I will not help you steal a car.
Steal a car? No, this is...
Lies! Lies! No, do not speak lies. I am a hero. I will defeat you.
Oh, man! Why did you hit me? Man, I'm calling the police.
Please do. We need a police officer here to handle you.
Handle me? Are you serious? Yeah, I need a police officer at 42nd and Elm very fast. I got a guy dressed in his underoos who just assaulted me.
Assaulted you? I did not. I was trying to stop you from stealing this car.
Stealing this car? Do you realize that it's my car? How can I steal my own car? That's right, and the police are here right now.
Whoa, this is your car?
Yeah, it's my car. I locked my keys in there. You hit me. You're going to jail.
This is just a big misunderstanding. Oh, okay, all right. Oh,
That's right, officer.
man, why didn't I just listen to Master Treelimb? I should have waited for the right time instead of taking things into my own hands. I shouldn't have gotten in such a hurry.
And you shouldn't have hit me.
Why didn't I just listen to Master Treelimb?
Get him to jail.
Okay, I'm sorry, okay. Well, kids, I sure learned my lesson. I took things into my own hands instead of waiting on God's timing. And today in your lesson, you're going to learn exactly how Moses did the same thing I did. Well, until next time, this is Captain Obvious, and I'm going to jail. See you later.
What's up?
No! up, everybody? It's me, the S-K-I to the double T-L-E-S, Skittles in the hizzy, and I'm ready to tell you what's up. Today, we're talking about waiting on God. So every time today that somebody asks you what's up, you tell them it's time to wait on the Lord. Waiting is not very easy. Sometimes we just want to ask God, why are you taking so long? But we got to remember that God's timing is perfect. We can't get in a hurry. We got to wait on Him, baby. So anytime somebody asks you what's up, you tell them it's time to wait on the Lord. And that's what's up. I got a rainbow of flavor, and I'm living for my Savior. Skittles out, baby. Yeah.
Hello, I am Jebel, famous fashion designer extraordinaire, and I design costumes for superheroes. Today, I am working on a costume for Captain Biscuits. While I do this, I need you to listen to today's paraverse. And today's paraverse, it says, "Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for Him to act." Psalm 37:7. What an amazing paraverse that was. Now I need just a little bit of help from the boys. If you could please stand to your feet and let's say the paraverse together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for Him to act. Psalm 37:7. Boys, that was a fantastic job. Have a seat, have a seat. Now I need all of my girls to stand up and let's say the paraverse together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for Him to act. Psalm 37:7. Very good, very good. Have a seat, have a seat. Listen, I want to tell you something that happened to me just the other day. I was designing Captain Biscuit's costume, and he sends me the text message and gives me the call, asking me every 15 minutes, "Is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready?" I finally told him, "You must show patience." And in life, we do the exact same thing. We are so impatient, and we just need to trust God's timing. So, I need everyone to stand up with me, and let's say the paraverse on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for Him to act. Psalm 37:7. Good job. Have a seat, have a seat. Well, listen, I have finally finished designing Captain Biscuit's costume. Do you want to see it? Yeah! All right, here it is. Thank you. Well, it is time for me to go. But until we meet again, I am Zebel saying, peace out.
Today's Bible story is found in Exodus chapter 2. You might remember when we left Moses in our last Bible story, he had been adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. Moses grew up in the palace as Pharaoh's grandson. He enjoyed all of the privileges and perks of palace life. But Moses had been taught by his real mother. He knew that he was really a Hebrew and that God had a plan for his life. One day, Moses was out walking. He came upon an Egyptian soldier beating a Hebrew slave. The Egyptians were always treating the Hebrews terribly. After all, the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt. Moses had no doubt seen scenes like this many times growing up, but this time it was different. Moses got very angry and decided to do something about it. He probably thought this was just not fair that God's people would be slaves like this. They didn't deserve to be treated this way. So Moses took things into his own hands. He looked around and saw that nobody was watching. He grabbed the Egyptian soldier, struck him, and killed him. Then Moses hid the Egyptian's body in the sand. Moses thought he had gotten away with it. The next day he went out walking again. This time he came upon 2 Hebrew slaves fighting and arguing with one another. Moses stopped them and said, "Why are you fighting with your brother like this? You're both Hebrews. You should not be fighting like this." One of the Hebrews turned to Moses and said, "Why? Are you going to kill me like you did that Egyptian soldier?" Moses could not believe it. How did this slave know what he had done? If this slave knew then, it wouldn't be long before Pharaoh found out. Moses knew this would spell certain trouble for him. Sure enough, Pharaoh did find out what Moses had done. Pharaoh tried to kill Moses. But Moses escaped by running off into the desert, and it was there in the desert that Moses would stay for many years. He had taken things into his own hands and caused a lot of trouble for himself. In your lesson today, you're going to learn that it never pays to get ahead of God's plan. We must always be patient and wait for God's perfect timing. When we take things into our own hands, it never goes well. Waiting is such a hard thing to do. Not just waiting on Christmas or waiting for your birthday or waiting for somebody to come pick you up. Sometimes we have to wait on God, and that can be hard too. Have you ever prayed for something and then you had to wait for it to happen? Has God ever promised you something but then you had to wait a while for it to happen? Waiting on God is hard. It's hard for us to do, and it was hard for Moses to do. So today we learned that Moses got tired of waiting on God to set the Hebrews free from slavery. It was definitely God's desire and definitely his plan to set the Hebrews free. But Moses wanted it to happen now. Moses wanted it to happen in his time. So instead of waiting on God to unveil his plan in his time, Moses took things into his own hands, and that didn't go so well for him. He ended up killing an Egyptian and getting in trouble, big trouble, and then he had to run for his life. So several terrible things happened when Moses decided to take things into his own hands instead of waiting on God's timing. These same terrible things happen to us too when we get impatient and we decide to take things into our hands. Let's find out what it does. When I take things in my own hands, I pay a high price. So Moses paid a high price for his impatience. He ended up having to run for his life in order to escape being killed by Pharaoh. Moses ran into the desert and he stayed there for many, many years. He was no longer a member of the royal family. In fact, he had no family. He no longer lived in the palace. In fact, he no longer had anywhere to live. He lived in the wilderness. He no longer had everything that he wanted right at the tips of his fingers. He now had nothing. He paid a high price for taking things into his own hands instead of waiting on God's time. It's the same with you and me. When we decide that our way is better instead of trusting God's plan, we end up paying a high price. We have to learn to be patient. If we trust God's timing, everything will work out just fine. If we take things in our own hands, we will pay a high price. Also, when I take things in my own hands, I cause others to suffer. Moses wasn't the only person who was hurt as a result of his actions because he decided to do it his way instead of trusting God. The Hebrew people remained in captivity for many years, much more longer than they should have. And God's plan all along was to use Moses to deliver the Hebrews from slavery. And we can see that because God made it possible for Pharaoh's daughter to adopt Moses. Moses was living right there in the palace. And we don't know. He may have ended up becoming the Pharaoh when his grandpa died. Can you imagine that? If Moses had become the Pharaoh, he could have just set the Hebrew people totally free. But instead, he got impatient and he killed the Egyptian soldier because he didn't like the way the soldier was treating the Hebrews. He not only caused pain for himself, but he caused pain for the entire Hebrew nation. And when we get in a hurry and make bad decisions instead of trusting God's timing, we end up hurting others. causing pain to not only hurt ourselves, but we hurt others that are around us. We cause pain to our family, our friends, those who depend on us. Everyone is affected when we don't trust God's timing. And the final thing that happens is when I take things into my own hands, I delay God's plan for my life. Delay means we cause God's plan to happen much later. God still had a plan to set the Hebrews free, and that plan still included Moses. It's just that Moses' actions caused God's plan to be delayed many years. Instead of happening when it was supposed to, it took a little bit longer. And we'll find out next week that God still wanted to use Moses in a very special way. Maybe you've gotten ahead of God's plan for your life. Maybe you thought your way was better than how God was working things out. You didn't want to wait, and so you made a huge mistake. That happens. We're human. Humans make mistakes. Now you and maybe people around you are suffering because of that mistake. But I have good news. God's plan may be delayed, but it's not destroyed. He still has a plan for your life. He still has a plan for my life. He still has a plan for everyone's life who's made a mistake. So all we have to do is ask God to forgive us, and He'll get us back up on the right path and go in the right direction. Waiting is never easy, but it is always worth it. So we need to be patient. Okay, since we're learning about Moses, we are memorizing the 10 Commandments. Now, some of you have already memorized them, and that's good because you'll be able to refresh your memory and see if you can remember them all and say them all. But some of us have not memorized them, so this is new for some people. So, I promise, at the end of this, you're going to be able to say all the commandments from memory. It's going to be that easy because you're going to remember the hand gestures that we put with them. Okay, so do you remember the one we learned last week? We learned commandment number 1. Hold your number 1. You shall have no other gods before me. Why is that? Because God is number 1. He's the only one true God. There are no other gods. So, commandment number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Now, for commandment number 2, we're going to hold up 2 fingers. Commandment number 2, 2 fingers. You shall not bow down to idols. You turn your fingers like this, and you do this. It's like this finger is bowing down to this finger. You shall not bow down to idols. That means idols like the god Baal. Remember how Elijah had the showdown with the prophets of Baal? Baal was an idol. And God is saying He's the one true God. You can't have any other gods before Him. So you can't have an idol either. So you shall not bow down to idols. Commandment number 2. Practice it, learn it, memorize it, and you will be able to say all of them when we're done. And it's so exciting to be able to learn that many Bible verses all at one time. Okay, love you guys.
Hey, what's up?